Today we are going to talk about healing from wounds because we all have them. And we're going to draw upon God's grace from a very sensitive area of healing, and that is healing from sexual wounds and sexual abuse. We're not going to go into any details, but because this is one of the worst wounds a person can suffer, seeing what God does in that area of healing, it can help all of us. There's also a need to speak about healing from sexual abuse because it's more common than we think. And it's so important to know that Jesus wants to heal it. I talked to a number of people who are survivors, and I asked, can we bring this up in very reverent, sacred ways during a homily? And they all supported it. I also talked to the 8 parents on our education committee of the school, and they all supported it. And just they were aware that if they get asked, it will allow them to have appropriate conversations or create opportunities for age-appropriate conversations. In the first reading, we're going to focus on 2 things God the Father says. First, "Here is my servant in whom my soul delights. He will bring forth justice to the nations. A bruised reed he will not break, and a dimly burning wick he will not quench." And so, of course, this refers to Jesus, the beloved servant of the Father, and he comes to us very gently. So we who are bruised, he doesn't overwhelm us. We who feel we're in great pain, we feel weak, we feel vulnerable, he comes to heal us. Second, the Father says to his servant, "I have given you as a covenant to the people to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison, those who sit in darkness." And one person wrote me, "My heart resonated with these words as they ring true in my healing journey. I can see the connection to baptism as this sacrament makes us a new creature." So today we're celebrating Jesus' baptism and the fact that he gave us the sacrament of baptism to begin a new life. So this is our first point for today. Jesus wants to give us all new life. In particular, those of us with great wounds, in particular those who have suffered sexual abuse. He wants to give us new life, life in him, life to the full. Sometimes we are tempted to believe maybe God doesn't want us healed. We're tempted to believe that we should feel like great pain, or we're tempted to blame ourselves. So let's just be clear, these temptations do not come from Jesus. He wants us to be free from those thoughts. Second point, in experiencing God's healing, it's a long journey. In this book, My Peace I Give You, Healing Sexual Wounds with the Help of the Saints, Dr. Dawn Eden recounts her long story of healing. She was sexually abused by a janitor when she was 5 years old at a Jewish synagogue. And when she was 31, she received the gift of faith in Jesus, and she felt very encouraged that he wanted her to have new life. But at the same time, she felt she didn't feel pure. So she went through these ups and downs, years of, she'd come closer to Jesus' mercy and then pull away. She would ask questions that seemed to be dead ends and then find answers. When she was a child, she talked to her mother about the abuse and she got blamed. And then later in life, she talked to her mother about it again and she found answers. So it's a very painful story, but it's a very real story. And most importantly, it's a very hopeful story because of God, counseling and therapy and friendships. And then third point, Jesus came to suffer with us. When Dawn was 5 years old, she asked her parents about Jesus, and her Jewish parents about Jesus, and they said he can't be God, because if he were God, he wouldn't die. And so that's very logical. From a certain point of view, God is all-powerful. He wouldn't let himself get hurt. But Jesus, he revealed that he came to suffer with us. He suffers for us on the cross. That's the greatness of his love. And 3 years prior to that suffering on the cross, he also reveals that love in his baptism. So the gospel says, Jesus came from Galilee to John at the Jordan to be baptized by him. John would have prevented him saying, I need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me?" But Jesus answered him, "Let it be so for now, for it is proper for us in this way to fulfill all righteousness." Then John consented. Christians for a long time have reflected, why does Jesus get baptized? He doesn't need to, right? Because John's baptism is about forgiveness of sins. Jesus has no sin. So why does he get baptized? And so Jesus gives this mysterious answer. Let it be so for now, for it is proper for us in this way to fulfill all righteousness. Righteousness refers to wanting what God the Father wants. And God the Father wants Jesus to identify with sinners, to identify with those who are in pain. These three paintings show the crowds. At that time, remember, thousands of people are going into the desert to St. John. They want to be baptized. They want their sins forgiven. They want this new life. And then, in this crowd, Jesus comes. God himself blends into this crowd, and he's identified with this huge group of sinners. And then he gets baptized. So Don Eden writes, Jesus invites us to be joined with him in baptism because, in the words of St. John Paul II, he wishes to be united with every individual. And in a special way, he is united with those who suffer. There's an episode from Dr. Eden's life that really shows the beauty, this power of Jesus wants to suffer with us. So when she was 31, she learned that some people with post-traumatic stress disorders have emotional flashbacks. And so for her, she found that provided her some relief because it explained why a few times a year she would emotionally re-experience her trauma. So just learning that, with that, her symptoms began to diminish. But one time, when she was in graduate school, she was talking to a professor. And she said something that seemed to embarrass him. And she didn't know what, and she was too embarrassed to ask. His face changed color, and he changed his behavior. And so she quickly left because she said for her, talking to someone in authority whose behavior changed suddenly and who she thought she offended, for her that was an emotional trigger, so she left. And she wrote this: "At the bottom of the stairs, I faced a choice. To my right was the library. If I went there, I might be able to distract myself and suffer on my way home. To my left was the chapel. If I went there, there was no telling how long I would cry and who might see me. With a push perhaps from my guardian angel, I turned left. Finding a seat in the back of the chapel, I sank to my knees. As the tears started to flow, I whispered, 'Dear Jesus, I know I can choose to suffer this with you or without you. I choose to suffer this with you. Don't leave me.' I cried and cried. Yet upon rising, even as some leftover tears trickled out, I felt different from other times I had suffered flashbacks. For the first time, I felt that even in my most intimate suffering, I was not alone. In the ancient phrase, God cannot suffer, but he can suffer with. When I finally made it back out the chapel door, I could not tell whether those last drops were tears of sorrow or tears of joy. Perhaps they were both." So at the end of her book, Dr. Eden doesn't say that all the pain is gone. She says, "The evil of my past is still evil, but it no longer has any power over me." God willing, these 3 points, Jesus wants to give us new life. Experiencing healing is a long journey, and Jesus came to suffer with us. God willing, these 3 truths can give us hope and maybe in some small way contribute to our healing. If you'd like to give feedback, please do. Just keep in mind, we're not touching on every aspect of this subject. We're just focusing, Jesus wants to heal us. And seeing how adoration helped Dr. Eden's healing, let's ponder our parish goal. Next year, by January 1st, 2027, we're inviting 500 of us to commit to weekly adoration. At the end of the gospel, it says, When Jesus had been baptized, a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased." Hopefully, we can all hear these words addressed to us. We are beloved sons and daughters of God. And these words, they point to Jesus' resurrection and to ours.